We're just a couple of weeks away from Mercedes launching the W15, and we'll finally get to see what Mercedes have been working on through the end of last season and over the winter break. With so much riding on this car being successful and so many news stories coming out about what's going on at Mercedes, let's put it all together and see what we've learnt about the W15 ahead of its launch on the 14th of February. In 2022, Mercedes came out with the W13, a car which had no side pods, but let's just stop for a moment. No side pods isn't the big issue, and Mercedes pointed this out several times over. But the zero side pod concept as a whole was endemic of a problem with the design of that car. In the wind tunnel and on the simulator and using CFD, it was predicting that it would be miles ahead of everyone else. There was so much performance, so much speed in that car, but as soon as it was on the track, that performance could not be unlocked. It turned out to be a flawed concept. It produced a completely unstable car which the drivers could not lean on and had no confidence in driving. Fast forward to halfway through 2022 and Mercedes finally decide to ditch the no side pod concept and that whole car philosophy in favour of designing a brand new car. Mercedes did produce side pods for the car and changed the underfloor and different parts of the vehicle, but it could not really change the entire car mid-season. So, over the winter and through the whole back end of last year, they've been working on the W15. Also, it's important to note that Mike Elliott, who was leading the technical charge of the W13 and 14, has stepped aside to allow James Allison, who was responsible for creating some of the best Mercedes Formula One cars of recent history during their dominant spell. And although a team is not made up of one main person, these people are leaders and they lead the technical development of the car. So there's been a change in technical leadership, and Allison has said some very interesting things. Just this week he come out speaking about how although they will be converging on the more conventional route that is now the Red Bull route, there's still room for innovation. The cars will look similar, but there will be innovation, there will be design on these cars which is different to the rest of the field. This is good because we don't want Formula 1 to become like Formula 2 with stock cars. We want them to be able to innovate, to be able to come up with new and unique ideas, but we also don't want them to be so far off the pace because they're so far off the design charts. He also clarified the reasons why these ground effect cars work. Now we know that ground effect is an aero philosophy where downforce is produced by tunnels under the car, almost like a vacuum. As the air passes through the tunnels, it sucks the car down to the floor. So what's really important is not just having good aero, it's important to have a stable platform. That's what Adrian Newey spent his time with the Red Bull technical team designing on the Red Bull cars in 2022. That stable suspension, that stable platform, especially at the rear, so that the cars maintain a consistent level of downforce around the track, or as much as is feasibly possible, because cars do move. When the cars hit into the floor, they bounce back up again, and that produces the porpoising that we see, where they attach the aero and then release it. And that's what Allison is saying, that Mercedes are trying to produce a more stable car. If the car is more stable, the confidence for the drivers will be higher, meaning that they can take it and drive it harder on track, giving Lewis Hamilton and George Russell a better chance of being able to take the fight to Red Bull at the front. Another benefit of producing a stable platform is that you're able to get the car to run closer to the ground without it hitting the ground and wearing away the skid plate. That means you're not going to have problems with legality when the FIA check the cars. There won't be a problem with wearing off the skid plate under the car because the cars won't be running that close to the ground. But the closer you can run the cars to the ground, the better the ground effect downforce will be and the faster your car can go. So producing a car that not only is aerodynamically quick but also that is stable allows you to get the peak performance and peak downforce from the car, which is something that Allison wants to develop with the W15. It's also very interesting seeing Toto Wolff stating that the new Mercedes W15 will be a completely new car, that they are changing everything. Now we hope they don't go too far and trying to go down a similar radical route that they went with the zero side pod concept of the W13 and 14, but we hope that there is a good change. Changing everything means that they're going to be trying new things, which is also very, very important. So the W15 should look very different to its predecessors, more similar to the rest of the field, but with its own innovations. And Toto Wolff also stated that he wants a 2.5 second advantage over the W14. Now that is a huge target, and to be fair, probably one that they can't actually meet. But the interesting thing is that by saying a 2.5 second gap, a massive gap, he's given his team a big task to complete. By doing so, he's trying to get the absolute most out of them. If he said, we only want a 1 second gap or even a half a second gap to the W14, it's not as hard. So he's clearly setting big and lofty targets to make sure that Mercedes fulfill their potential. So everything about the W15 coming out is very, very exciting. And of all of the cars that are going to be released over the next few weeks, I think along with Ferrari, Mercedes may be the most interesting car to look at because they have the most to do to get back to the front. Ferrari and McLaren, yes, they need to make changes, but it's not as radical, it's not as big. They only need to make slight changes to their car, although I think Ferrari are going for a very similar complete change. But Mercedes need to go for everything. They are changing the whole car. So when we see the W15, it will be a complete departure from what we saw last season. What do you think about Mercedes' chances with its W15? Let me know your thoughts on this in the comments below.